Hello, and I'm talking to you today on the Divorce TV show live stream about co-parenting and dealing with, particularly if you're trying to do it with a difficult parent. And I've got a guest today who is Jenni Rock, and Jenni is going to be giving us some of her wisdom and just finding out a bit more about the kind of clients she works with and the ways that she can help people. So I'm now going to introduce you to Jenni. I have to start with Jenni. That's such a cool name. Just think solid. This is what I need when I'm in co-parenting chaos.
It is real. It's not changed.
So to start with, Jenni, there's lots. I don't think there's enough people who specialise in co-parenting because there's so many of us who need that help. And there's co-parenting coaches and specialists who can help you if your kids won't do their homework or they won't brush their teeth or behavioural problems. But when it comes to divorce and separation, there's a whole other layer of complexity, and it's not just about trying to get the kids to do things. It's actually more about being able to co-parent with this other person who might not be very nice a lot of the time. And that's an area that you've got quite a bit of experience in, isn't it?
It is indeed. Many years of experience of trying to keep somebody in the polite phase, which, to be fair, never really worked because it didn't matter what I tried. There was always some reason why I was in the wrong. So it took me many years of trial and error, and after my divorce and trying to co-parent situation, many years of therapy to get me where I am today, so I can help other people.
And when you say help other people, describe a typical example of a parent that you would be helping?
Absolutely. Basically, the parents are at war. Whether it's both parties that are at war or just one party is at war with the other person, it creates this situation that is extremely toxic and so damaging for the children. And you don't realize the damage until much further down the line, because suddenly they're acting out, they're self-harming, they're smoking, drinking alcohol, they're getting into fights, they're going to parties and not coming home. And all of those difficult behaviours quite often stem from a toxic co-parenting situation.
Yeah.
And when
I was going to say,
toxic co-parenting is not labeling somebody as a toxic parent. It's just saying that the two people cannot communicate in a way that is helpful to each other or to the children.
And it's important to say that, isn't it? Because it doesn't mean they're failures. It doesn't mean they're bad parents. It doesn't mean they're bad people. But but through the experience of separation and divorce, sometimes the massive chronic lack of inability to communicate that is there, it comes out, and the people who suffer most, of course, are the children. But those long-term effects that I think are really important. I mean, what you're saying makes absolute sense to me. Some people listening might be thinking, well, hang on a minute, how does that's just normal teenagers. Why are they acting out? But it's not as simple as that, is it? Because actually, especially the self-harming, that's something that is known to be a major issue with children whose parents are divorcing. And quite often the parents, do you find this, don't see the connection at all?
No, not at all. Because I think they're so consumed by these feelings. Generally what happens in a toxic co-parenting situation is that they get to this awful, horrible place where the marriage just falls apart. And then they don't realise that they're stuck in that communication loop and they're not moving out of it. They think that once they get divorced, it's all going to be better. No, they're all still stuck arguing and fighting over every single little thing. You didn't pack the swimming trunks. You didn't give me that. You didn't give me this. You have to give me this way. And it's constant arguments and bickering. that in reality should have disappeared once they're able to go their separate ways, but unfortunately they're not disappearing. And because they're so in, consumed by this rage and anger, they can't see past that to the damage. And that's not to say that they're bad people or bad parents. They're not. Quite often, these people are perfectly nice, normal people. It's just that this other person is like a red rag to a bull. Really is just the thought of them just brings up all of that emotional overwhelm inside them.
And I can hear in my head some voices who would of those kind of parents in that situation who might be thinking, well, that's just how it is because they basically it's the other person's fault, so therefore there's
Mm-hmm.
nothing they can do. And of course we both know that's just so not true. And one of the reasons I run the co-parenting plan workshops is not just to help people think about what to put in them, but to realize they really need to have those discussions. They need to be able to communicate, not just who's going to pick up and where and how, but what are we going to do when one of us brings a new partner into the relationship, and all of those tricky situations which can flare up and are, and suddenly 2 or 3 years down the line cause absolute chaos, including courts and bills and all kinds of nasty stuff. Could you perhaps share some of the common mistakes that you've seen people making and some of the realizations and learnings that they've come to with a bit of help from you?
I think one of the realizations would be that um, they don't see that the other person is lashing out because they're hurting. So maybe they have decided that this marriage no longer suits them, therefore they want to leave. And the other person is kind of like, what did I do wrong? What happened? And then all of a sudden it's tit for tat, and then it's communications out the window, and then it's like they're both saying, I'm going to go for full custody. You're a bad parent. They weren't a bad parent 6 months ago. They, they were perfectly capable 6 months ago. Why are they a bad parent now? And it's purely because they're projecting how they feel inside onto the co-parenting situation. And it is very much a projection. I've had some really extreme cases from a woman whose husband tried to kill her and ended up in jail, and he was harassing her from prison. I've had another client whose husband took the children during the pandemic phase and refused to send them back. So he retained the children and basically kept her away. She was a stay-at-home mum, kept her away from her children for 2 years before I got my hands on her. And working together, we had to focus on making her as strong as she could be so that she could fight for her children, because she was no good as a crying mess in the corner. That wasn't going to
And
save anybody.
and sometimes, and you do need to use the courts for when someone's not, a child abduction, when there's any risk to the children, or if one parent's
Yeah.
just not letting you see them. Did she get a defined contact order in the end? Was that the route she took?
Um, in the end, they ended up having one child each, with visitation on both sides. That was a better solution. It wasn't her preferred solution. However, two parents make a child. They're half of each.
Yeah.
They have to be willing to admit that that person was good enough to have a baby with. That person was good enough to have a marriage with when they were happy.
Yeah.
That they're still the same mum, dad, whatever. That's not changed. So it's better for the children to be able to move between both worlds with the least conflict possible,
Yeah.
so that
And
they don't have to.
yeah. And was it necessary for a judge to order that, or were they able to come to that agreement another way?
They ended up with a court order, and that was because it was such a high conflict situation.
Yeah.
There was a lot of parental alienation, there was a lot of basically abuse of the court system, and there was a lot of
Mm.
disregarding orders that had been made. by the other party to comply. So there was a lot of failure to comply. So it had to be done that way. But she never wanted to take that route.
Yeah, because
But
it's scary.
unfortunately,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah,
and many
absolutely.
dads have to take that route as well, unfortunately.
Mm,
Um,
yeah.
and so it's quite broad the work you do. Do you ever help people where they just need to get the kids to brush their teeth and do their homework? Do you do any of that kind of co-parenting coaching?
Not really, because that's really not my speciality. I could give advice as a mother, but that's not the place I'm at.
It's more the
The work,
parents themselves, getting them into a
mm,
space where they can, yeah,
it's yeah,
be
it's helping the
parents.
parents. Yeah, helping the parents
Hmm.
be parents, but also be um, the best parents that they can be.
Yeah.
So, working through this whole toxic scenario, making sure that they're being healthy, they're working on themselves as much as working with the children to be a better person so that they don't get sucked into any conflict, so that they are strong, so that they have that fight when they need it to be able to change the situation.
I get the feeling that, like me, you've gained a lot of your knowledge just through working with people. They are our best teachers. But did you do any other specific trainings as part of your journey, or what other things kind of influenced you along this path?
Yeah, well, I split from my son's father when he was 3, and it was a very volatile split. There were police, there were road closures, there was a hostage situation,
Oh my God.
and it was very dramatic. And I couldn't talk about it because if I talked about it, then I would not be able to stop crying. That was basically my mindset was going to go to work, I'm going to do everything, I'm not going to talk about any of this because if I do, I don't think I'll stop crying. So I just carried on life as normal. And in the end, that started to manifest as physical issues. My physical health started to go downhill, my mental health was going downhill. And I did a lot of therapy, a lot of work on myself. I went to not parenting classes, but domestic abuse class. I don't know if you've heard of the Freedom Project
Oh
or
yes.
Yellow Door. Yeah, went through the whole kind of system, and then going through that, it kind of sparked within me this desire to do more, to help other people, because I could see that there were so many other people that were being affected this way. And I trained as a life coach, and I didn't feel that I was qualified enough. I just felt that it wasn't just if I'm going to mess with people's heads,
Yeah.
let me do it well. So I went and did another training in America that qualified me as a mastery coach. So I'm a certified mastery coach that allowed me to really get some really deep transformations in quite a quick turnaround. So I did that, and then during that process, and since that process, I've been working with people from all over the world in all sorts of different situations to help them to overcome, the toxic co-parenting that they've been living with.
Have you worked with many fathers?
Um, One or two. One that
Mm.
stands out is an actor, and his wife basically offered him money and said, "Go." Said £200, go. I don't want you here anymore. And when I caught up with him, when I met him, he had literally been to the hardware store that day to buy the equipment to kill himself that night.
Wow.
He is now living his life. He's got a new place. The old place was sold. There wasn't much equity in it anyway. So the old house was sold. He's now renting somewhere. He's got the kids half the time. He is working. He is happy. He's moving forward with his life. So to go from a serious suicidal situation,
Mm.
through to actually enjoying life again, was a massive shift. And well, I'm so proud of him for doing that.
And pretty good for his kids as well.
Absolutely,
Because
they needed him.
Because the suicide rate, I think it's at least doubles for men post-divorce. It's ridiculously high, and not being able to, feeling that you can't access your own children, and often it can be a vicious, long battle that is just too much for some of them. And sometimes they just convince themselves that they shouldn't bother, and maybe they'll see the kids later when they're older. And I always go, no. They'll go, where were you? So it's always worth getting that support. So I'm really glad, Jenni, that you've joined us as part of Best Way to Divorce, and you're on the Amicable Divorce directory as well. And I'm going to share this around, and I hope you can put some links in the comments on the different platforms so people can find out more. What's the best way for them to connect with you? Do they normally just come straight in and do an initial session, or do they have a little chat first? What's the way in for them?
We have a chat to make sure that I can help them, that I'm the right person to help them, because obviously we're not always a good fit. So I need to make sure that I can actually do the work with that person. So we do a 1 hour or up to 1 hour, 30 minutes to 1 hour pre discussion. If during that time I decide that, yeah, this is good, then we can then discuss whether or not that person wishes to proceed with me, because there's no obligation to just have a chat with me. And quite a lot of people will just have a chat, and that's enough to just kind of start turning the situation around enough for them to be able to follow that path themselves, if that's what they choose. But yes, I have on my website, I'll put the links into the comments. There is a section on there where you can contact me, and you can just book into my calendar and have a chat with me. Go from there.
Fantastic. And just to finish with, what would you say is what makes you really drives you forwards with this work? Because it's difficult work to do, and you're dealing with other people's trauma and worrying about their children. So what makes you do this work?
I think I decided to do this work because I wanted to be the help that I never had. And it was at such a crucial time in my life and in my son's life, that had I had some kind of help and support, I think the outcomes would have been very different. And I would have gone through a lot less trauma and a lot less heartache, and I would have spent a lot less money, had I had somebody in my corner helping me through and just guiding me to understand, sort of what was coming at me and the best way to actually respond without inflaming the situation.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jenni. I'll look forward to interviewing you again very soon. Bye for now.
Bye.